So very good afternoon, and thank you for being here. It's a privilege for me actually to be a part of this August gathering. It's been the third year in the running that I've been part of the ICT, Bridge conference, and I've always left with a lot of impressive, showcase of how a conference can be run. How do we really keep the audience engaged with a very thematic discussions around? I hope I'll be able to contribute my bit to this conversation, and thankfully, the speakers who spoke ahead of me actually have done a lot to make my job easier. And in fact, the sad part is a lot of what I'm going to be talking about might be repetitive, but I'll try and bring in my context to it, and hope in the time that I spend here, the point that I make, make some sense to you, and you'll be able to take away some of those with you as you go back. Well, on that note, let me quickly begin. The topic is very interesting, and I think this is the buzzword today, and the flavor of the season. And the only thing that I want to really emphasize is the season. For once, I think it's going to be never-ending. We always see that the seasons come and go, but looks like the current season where we are talking about all this, it's here to stay, and for all the right reasons, because we really don't know what the next season is going to look like, and it's very, very difficult to even fathom how the things are going to change tomorrow, the day after. The things are changing at so rapid a pace, you don't even have time to think about what next, and therefore you have to be always on your toes to look at what can be done differently to remain grounded and stay sustained to live through the next season if ever that comes. And what I have here is some of my thoughts, which I believe I picked up, I've been learned from my own colleagues, the people that I interact with, and my own experience, over the last so many years. Yeah. So we just spoke of the very transformational journey that we are all part of, and a lot of us want to call it the fourth industrial revolution. I'll not spend time because even Sriram spoke about it at length. Santosh talked about it, and of course, Mr. Mohan Reddy spoke at length about how things are changing and what this revolution is all about. And we honestly do not know if there's going to be a fifth one for now. I don't know if we even survive that. So this is something we all are aware. What we are not aware is, are we prepared enough? Are we ready enough to really live through this revolution? And which is where I believe that constant thinking of what can be done differently is going to be extremely important for each one of us. And the way we think, the way we act, has to be inspiring for the people around us. Otherwise, it's going to be of no use. If you're going to be thinking about it or doing things in isolation, nobody's going to learn from you. Nobody's going to pick things that you've done better or have improved over the previous times. It's not going to be of any use at all. So therefore, whatever we try and do, I think each one of us in this room are very accomplished in our own fields. Unless we do this so that people can learn from us, we will not be able to add value. And that's going to be extremely important. And this is seriously thinking, it's very fueled by all that is happening around us. I'm a very non-technical person. I'm from HR. So I see technology or the changes in technology from a distance. But I do learn from it, and I because it is impacting me also. Whether I'm at work or at home with my children or with my friends or colleagues, it is impacting me every passing moment, every waking hour. It is impacting me, and therefore I can't be saying that I'm a technical. I'll be saying non-technical forever, because I do learn whatever little I can, because that is important for me to survive and stay ahead. And the kind of technologies, whether it is digitization, automation, mobilization, all these are buzzwords for me, but I think they are changing the way we think, we breathe, and we live every single moment. And therefore, we have to, at some stage, make an effort to understand what these are in our own ways. Nobody is expecting you to be an expert in these things, but if you're not even making an effort to understand what those are, I don't think you'll even be able to prepare for it and be a winner at that that race that you're running for yourself. And which is why understanding is important. Any expertise is your choice, because that depends on what you want to achieve in life, whether are you really going forward. That is something you need to decide for yourself. But understanding is extremely important, and have some level of appreciation for all this is going to be important to you. And this is, for a lot of students that you are nurturing in your institutions, the employees that you are working with in your organizations, I think this is touching everybody. So therefore, it is very, very fair to say that whatever we are seeing as changes in the so-called fourth industrial revolution is impacting every single person out there. And therefore, we have to be aware about what it can do to us and make subtle changes in our own day-to-day lives, maybe further discipline ourselves so that we are better prepared and are able to sustain for a very long time to come. Moving on, the fact certainly remains, and I'm sure all of you will agree as I speak about this, the way we work today is not going to be the same. Taking my own example, I've spent about almost 25 years now in the industry. When I started out, a lot of work I was doing today doesn't exist, at least in the way it was. And a lot of work in my own fraternity within HR has been outsourced. A lot of work, and I'm sure if I were to start to list down, this slide will not be enough. A lot of that work has been outsourced, which means the people who are actually working for a company as a full-time employee, making a fair bit of money, are no longer needed. Because somebody out there who's not in the four walls within your organization, out there in some shop, some small agency, small setup, is actually doing that for you. So it's outsourced. What is going to happen tomorrow? That particular outsourced work will get digitized, which means even they will not be able to survive to continue what they've been given as an outsourced opportunity by companies which are much larger today and cannot continue to grow the way they have been growing. So this is how the changes are happening. And if you look at your own work, especially from an industry standpoint, whether it is an HR person's job or a person who's from the finance department or from the procurement department, I'm talking about the support because I can speak much comfortably about that. A lot of work is no longer available for people to do it. So are the jobs going down? The answer is no. Jobs are actually increasing. It's just that they are no longer available in the large organization people aspire to be part of. You should be happy about doing the job, leave aside the brand that you're associated with. And that's the order of the day today. But soon enough, a lot of that work will also start to disappear. It'll start becoming digitized, and the process will get digitalized, and we really don't know how to really manage that situation. And we're talking about nurturing, the students of today and telling them that tomorrow there's a bright future. I'm not too sure, how are they receiving it? Because unless we create a bright future for them, it'll be unfair to even say that. And therefore, it's a responsibility upon us to take every possible step to create that future for them so that they can look up to it and get there as quickly as possible with a very, lot of energy in them. The second part is the job that exists today may not exist in the future. And I just spoke of that, right? A lot of jobs will just disappear. But we all know, and I think there's been a lot of debate across various forums, that there'll be newer jobs that will come up. One of the estimates that the World Economic Forum has said that, 2/3 of our children today will be doing jobs that are not existing today. And that's a reality. And I think this has been beaten to death that is going to happen. There are a lot of jobs that do not exist will come up. A lot of the jobs that exist today will disappear. So that brings us to a question that if we don't even know the kind of jobs that are going to come up, what do we prepare our people for? What do we prepare our children for? What skills do they really need? And that's what this debate is all about even today, the theme. How do we make sure we augment skills? But even before we start to think about augmenting those skills, we need to know what those skills are. And only then they can have a focused effort to build those skills and then augment those skills. And only then growth can be accelerated. I'm sorry, tongue twister that was. And this is something that we all need to really understand and make sure the generations to follow understand in the way we are doing it, in the way we are understanding it. If there's a difference in understanding, then there'll be a mismatch in people's expectations. And they'll curse no one but us for having not shown them the right path, for having not painted the right picture for them to be prepared for. And the skills, like I said, we don't even know the kind of job that will come up in the future. But therefore, we don't know what really the skills that will be needed, and therefore they will be very dramatically different. And a lot of studies have happened. A lot of experts in this field was dedicated their time and effort to understand what those skills can be, or are these the skills that are here today? We'll have to change, by a shade to make them relevant for that future that we are all, bracing for. Do a random search on Google. You'll find a bunch of skills that are there for the future. And that, like I said, that's a buzzword today. Future of work, future of skills, workforce of the future. If you do some of this random search, you're getting something very similar. Of course, different people have said differently, but end of the day, if I were to look at it, they mean the same thing. And what I've done is to look at, I also did a bit of, I didn't do a primary or a secondary research, I did a random search. And then I found that a lot of skills that we really are looking at that may be relevant in the future are very familiar, and then we've seen this in the earlier presentations also. But talking about the skills, fundamentally we know that skills are of essentially two types. And they are soft skills and the hard skills. They're fundamentally of two types. And I think it's important, I'll not spend a lot of time because this is something that we all are familiar with, but just to clarify as to what they really mean. And in the context of what we are speaking, I think it becomes relevant. Hard skills are teachable. In a school, in a college, in an organization, or any setting which is there for learning, hard skills can be taught. And that's what we very comfortably say, technical skills can be acquired overnight. You give them a book, and tomorrow is a test, chances are at least 80% of them will get it right. The other 20 may not. How much of them they will be able to retain? It's another question and another debate for another time. But teachable skills, hard skills are teachable, and we all kind of understand that. And we have seen this in my own life also when I was studying, and like most kids around, I do not want to generalize it, but like most of us around, we used to study closer to the exam. Read through the book, vomit it out, get done with it. That's been the reality, and I don't mind saying that in this forum. And then, even today, some of the students still believe that's a way to do it. Because some students have also realized that what I study in college may not be relevant in my actual work life. So why do I really slog it out through the year? Because tomorrow I may not study this subject at all. But it's important for me to really clear this exam, right? So that's really happening, and they're very binary in nature. Either you have it or you don't. And these are skills we're talking about, whether it is to do with being a skilled technician or someone who's very good at a certain subject. You either have it or you don't. It's also got to do with the experience, and a lot of skills that you learn, the hard skills that you learn is from experience. You start to do some carpentry work, and you become a carpenter of certain. That's a skill that you've acquired by learning, by experience. So either you're a carpenter or you're not a carpenter. So it's very binary. And this is again something you can very easily represent on a resume. You can say I have skill A, B, C, and you can put it very, very clearly black and white on a resume. People read it, they'll be able to relate to what you can do and what skills do you bring to the table. On the other hand, and of course they are very measurable, because if you set a test for them, you know how they're scoring, and on the basis of that you can actually assign some jobs for them. Last, if you look at the other side, the soft skills, and then a lot of us are interested in what these soft skills are, why they're so critical, and why is it becoming so important for us to really look at how do we move from here to the next stage. These are required over a period of time. They can't be trained overnight. And this is continuous learning that enables you to pick up some soft skills. And they cannot be done in a classroom setting. Can never be done in a classroom setting. You give them a book to learn your soft skills, that is also a myth. And which is why we believe that if you really are looking at honing your students, your children in soft skills, which are so important, you have to start to live those skills with them so that they learn from you. Sriram said a while ago that when you are speaking, your children are listening to it and they are picking it up from there. Therefore, these skills also, when you actually do it on a day-on-day basis, people around you look at them, they ape you, and they learn from that. And therefore, soft skills are not trainable in a classroom, cannot be acquired overnight. And more importantly, these are very person-specific. If two people in a certain setting are learning soft skills through certain means, chances are the learning or the level of skills they acquire over a period of time will be different. And they will actually showcase those skills in a particular setting, that will also change because the environment could be very different. Therefore, the way you learn a certain soft skill over a period of time, when you really start to use it, it may not be the same every single time. And therefore, it becomes that much more complex. While I have certain skills which are very, very important, which are relevant, but will I be able to use this every time at the same level of expertise, the same level of success? That's a big question mark. And which is where we believe that the soft skills are not only important, but also very complex. And therefore, a lot of focus has to be there, where you're making an effort to bring up your children, teach your students about what those soft skills are and how to really leverage those. They're very hard to measure. Like I said, it is very person dependent. It might differ from person to person, environment to environment, and it is very dynamic in nature, and therefore it's very, very difficult to even measure. And certainly if you write a long list of things on your resume, a person who's reading it will make no sense out of it. Unless he's experienced you, unless he's seen you actually perform using those soft skills in a setting, in a real life setting. And therefore, many times we take an assumption that this person is good on certain soft skills, maybe let me take a chance at it. But there have been instances where people actually think they've made a wrong decision in making a hiring choice. Because when the person actually gets into the real life environment, work environment, he or she does not demonstrate those skills which he or she has mentioned in the resume. And that's a reality. A lot of people believe that because soft skills are so important, let me fill up my resume with a list of those. But the reality is when you actually put the person onto test in the real life situation, a lot of them actually fail. Agree with that? That's the reality, and therefore we need to understand how do we really crack this one. Moving further, so what are these really skills all about? And I spoke a while ago that when I did a random search of skills for the future, it threw up different microsites. I was looking at those. These are the ones which really came up as common across each of those search elements. And this is something we've seen in the earlier presentations also. They're not any different. The order could be different, but these are the ones. And guess what? What are these skills? Hard or soft? Each one of them is a soft skill. So while there's a lot of technology changes that are happening, it's disrupting the way we live and behave, or we are going about doing our job here. They're all hard skills, but to be able to really excel in those, you need these soft skills. Today, the kind of millennial generation that we are all, sharing our space with, the Gen Z that has come around and challenging some of us, they're very good at picking up stuff. You give them a book, you give them a project, they'll do it the very next day and do it extremely good. But when it comes to managing it in a larger setting, being put up with people to deal with it, most often they fail because they're very self-centered, unfortunately. For them, it's like me, myself. And the moment you put them in a setting where more people are there and there is a battle for getting the first position or the rank that you need, they miserably fail. And we are experiencing this as we hire students, as we hire people from different organizations. When they come together in a setting which is new for them, seldom they succeed. Very seldom they succeed. And they fall many times, and then they really learn from that. But do we have the patience or the time to really allow them to fall so many times? The answer may be maybe not. And therefore, the reason the emphasis on this is we must get it right. We need to learn the formula. How do we get it right? So while the technology is going to really drive the future, and we all know it, Industry 4.0 is all about that. It's going to drive us. The human element, the human-only traits, which is the soft that I spoke about a while ago, are really going to be more critical. And nobody can, say that they're not valuable, they're not important. They can wait for some other time. They are really going to be very, very important, very, very valuable. And we have to focus all our energies to making sure that the people who are working with us or who are working for us understand that and are able to pick that up. And at an earlier stage, the more delay you do, the damage can be that much more. So it's very important for us to really understand, what are the human insights and the wisdom. We need to really invest in time. A lot of institutions that I've been, involved with or been associated with in so many years, I know a lot of e-schools, and I'll refer to e-schools here, engineering schools. They have something called the finishing school, right? What is finishing school? There's something, a recent phenomenon. When I say recent, it's not about a year or two, but for a few years, the concept of finishing school has picked up a lot of attention. What that means is, while a student goes through his core engineering subjects through the 4 years, towards the end, back end of the third year or the fourth year is when this small sandwich, or the finishing school, or called the bridge course gets introduced. And what is the purpose of that? We want to make our students industry ready. So what has happened to the 4 years of engineering education that they've been really going through? Right? Was it not, enabling them to become industry ready? I don't think I get a very good answer or a very clear answer from each one of them. They say, you know what, industry is looking for only this, that I have to put this in the curriculum. And again, who's funding for it? There are different models, of course. Sometimes the college is actually funding it fully. Sometimes it is a shared model. Or sometimes another third party comes in and says, you know, I will be a third party into this, and then the model comes about. But the whole idea is the 3 or 4 years of engineering education versus the 3 months of finishing school in soft skills area, and naming it as employability skills, to me sounds very odd. And going back to the earlier slide that I spoke about, technical skills can be, you know, learned overnight, can be acquired through a, you know, a rigorous study of the material, and you actually pick them up. And even in industry, when people are moving from one project to the other, when the technology is changing, the skills required are changing, they go through a boot camp, and they pick it up very quickly. People who are on bench, they are asked to get ready with the next possible skill that you might want to have to, you know, use for the next project from a new client. They do it over a boot camp. And this finishing school looks like a boot camp. But the fact remains, none of the soft skills can be taught in a boot camp kind of situation. So one thing that seriously the institutions around, you know, in this room, but even outside, must seriously consider is, can we move away from the boot camp concept and actually look at making it a part of the curriculum which is on a continuous basis, and create a lot more outside the classroom opportunities for people to learn and hone those soft skills, because a lot of it is experiential in nature. And unless that mindset changes, I don't think making an effort to say we are making our students employable by making this, you know, finishing school mandatory is not going to help. And that to me is a most critical element, because today when we even, you know, I come from Accenture and I have a lot of other colleagues here from different industries, when we go hiring into the campuses, the typical formula is, it's a given students have acquired their academic scores. We don't even go there to test that knowledge. We don't do that at all. All we try and do is do a shortlist based on certain percentage, which is a very standard process. And that takes into account that a certain pair of students have met the criteria and therefore they are at that stage, bring them in, and then do a one personal interview. And that one personal interview is good enough for us to gauge whether the person is even, you know, fit for the kind of job we have, the kind of organization we want to hire for. Sometimes, you know, colleges say, you have not even tested them on the technology. I said, I don't need to do that. And you're doing a 10 minutes interview or 15 minutes and you're rejecting our students. I said, to me, that 5-minute conversation, that 10-minute conversation, good enough to figure out whether even I can have a very decent conversation with this candidate. If I'm not able to have that, I seriously doubt the ability of this candidate to face my client in a real life situation. And that could be a disaster for me. And therefore, you know, we have clearly said that, and to me personally also, from my own experience, I believe we have to spend a lot more time spending with the individual having that conversation, rather than, you know, testing their technical skills which they have actually acquired and have proven through their examinations and other, you know, curriculum-based interventions that the colleges have. So therefore, the need for running this, you know, soft skills campaign for the students should not be limited to a finishing school which lasts for a few days or a few weeks, but has to be continuous in nature, and coupled with a lot of experiential learning outside of the classroom. If you're able to do that in a very focused, in a very very focused manner, I'm sure the results will be a lot better. And I can trust you that the moment you start to think on those lines, even your own thinking about that curriculum, that need for having that program on an ongoing basis will change dramatically. What is important again is start to engage with what might be. Today, we believe that whatever people are saying the change is going to look like, that's their idea. I think we need to start looking at what we believe the change is going to be looking like. And only then our understanding of the change will be that better. So therefore, start to engage with what might be then instead of what is. Because we all know change is the only constant. And some of you heard that change is not only constant, but is also accelerating. The pace of change is really dramatically increasing. So therefore, instead of relying on what somebody else is talking about, what the change is going to look like, start looking at your own view of that change. You'll be able to relate to it much better. And be able to create a solution that works for you or for your entity that you're part of. And in conclusion, The big question to really ask, and this is again, something that I ask myself every time, and I think it's relevant for everybody in this room in the context of what we're discussing is, are we here to be driven by change, or we want to drive it, right? And if we are able to get that very clear in our mind, I think change will start to happen. And this kind of conversation you need to have in small groups with your own set of students, with your own set of faculty members, and say that, what are you here for? Are you here to listen to my instructions and then do, or you want to create your own ecosystem where you will thrive because the experience that you have, the knowledge that you have possessed is actually going to help a lot more people around you. And that reminds me of what Mr. Mondadi said in the morning. A lot of institutions, good or bad, I don't know, and I don't want to be a judge out there, hire because there are candidates who are PhDs. Brilliant. They've got the best of education, they've done extensive research, they've got a PhD, and they're put to start to teach. What is missing is they have no ability or idea how to teach. And that's a huge gap out there. So maybe one of the ideas could be is, pick up a PhD who's also got a background in education. You might have a much better chance of doing a good job of teaching in your institution. Draw a lot more students. So some of those subtle changes will have to happen if you really are looking at building your set of students for the future, which is not so very clear to us, but we know it's coming up. Human-only traits are going to be in premium because they cannot be digitized or automated, and therefore we need to really start to invest in time and effort to make those happen for our people who we look up to a lot as future generations. Thank you so much for your time.